welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So, a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Endless, Flat Earth Sage, Goldie McKiernan, Phoenix Rising 86, Retro Bill, More Books, Canna Bear, Viber Oats, Michael Kahn, Rob H, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Troy Shuker, Harry Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Dale West Watson, Maria Neelands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, The Real Gabster, Liam Nedrick Jr., Abraham Mohammed, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic 936, Life is Short, Texas Mike, and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
Stir 'em up.
I just trying to get the air stirred up. Nobody have nothing?
Well, I keep getting the same thing from this one guy. I gotta remember his name. He keeps saying that relative density don't explain why things go down. So, like, okay, helium, he says all unsupported matter goes down. So not everything, right?
Is gas matter, Neil?
What's that, Nathan?
Would you call gas matter?
I mean, I would.
Well, it is, isn't it? It's
It
stuff.
is.
Right. Does that go down?
No, and that's what I said.
So
That's
the
what he comes
assertion
back
is,
with.
if you know, further to that from a fundy, gas go down, go boom boom. Right?
Basically, but I think he's a flat earther, so I guess he's on the other side. Let me find the last thing he wrote, and I will get right back to you.
That statement really triggers anybody that wants to make that statement. Okay, all unsupported matter goes down. It's okay. So gas go down, go boom boom. Go splash splash, make puddles. That's what gas does, is it? Okay? No.
Oh, premise one, all unsupported matter goes down. Observation one, gas doesn't necessarily obey that. Therefore, gas isn't matter. Problem solved.
If you say so. So the sun, a gas giant. That's not matter. Okay.
Yeah,
They'll have a trouble with that, I think. I mean, you're trying for them.
Okay, I have it. Hold on. Let me read
I appreciate the
his last
sentiment.
Sorry. I found his last statement. I just want to read it because I think it's pretty funny. Let's see if I can find it. I just had it. Okay. You know, there's got to be a freaking better way. And the way I got to get it. I took the picture of it.
I don't know, you said you had
is.
it about 35 seconds ago while we were talking to each other, and now you've just
waiting.
mumbled about how you haven't got it for the last 40 straight seconds.
Are you here? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you mumbling how you haven't got it, and you've got it while we're talking.
I'm just waiting for someone to explain how relative density determines the direction of down without knowing where the Earth is. That was his final bendy light. That's this guy.
Without knowing where the Earth is?
What are you talking about?
Correct.
It's just nonsense. It's a stupid question. What do you mean where Earth is? Relative to what? His heliocentric sky vacuum and the rest of the planets in it? Well, that's nonsense. We don't have a heliocentric sky vacuum. Earth's not a sphere in that sky vacuum, second law of thermodynamics violation. And where he is where he's standing.
Correct. I said it's all medium based, and he denies that.
Is he attributing sentience to these things?
We've got a whole narrative
Yes.
going. The rebellious gas particle. They go up, they reach an arbitrary point, and one of them turns to the other and says, Karen. And Karen turns back to the other gas particle and says, what's that, Carmen? She says, I say we stay here. She goes, now, Carmen, why would you want to stay here? She's like, I'm sick of these laws. Why should we be governed by the second law of thermodynamics? I'm not going to expand into this available volume called the sky vacuum. I'm going to stay right where I am. I'm going to name this line after me. I'm going to call it the Carmen line. And we will burn our bras in defiance of the natural laws that we are not going to obey. Now, further to that, they get a bit fat, they get a bit complacent, and then they come back down. Now, in that process, there's obviously all sorts of political agendas that go on. There's other characters that come in that try and govern what they're doing, but they don't want to have it. There's all sorts of stuff going on. Yeah, bottom line.
Well, the funny thing is, I don't think this guy's a fundy. I think he's a flat earther, but I think he's on the other side with this dielectric acceleration and ether and all of that nonsense. So that goes hand in hand.
What, with a downward bias for gas?
Correct.
Gas doesn't have a downward bias, Neil.
They seem to think, I will say it the way he said it, all unsupported matter goes down.
Like gas. Go down, go boom boom, go splash splash, form puddles, because it's unsupported matter. No, Neil. Gas doesn't go down, go boom boom, go splash splash. Like bouncy balls poured into a fish tank, it expands in all directions at a high velocity. Neither does it reach an arbitrary point in space and decide that volume isn't going to be a volume it's going to expand into. It doesn't have that power. It's not sentient. It's not going to turn to Karen and say, I stay here, my name is Carmen. That's not going to happen. Gas just expands in all directions at a high velocity to fill whatever space it has to fill. That's how gas behaves.
And I agree.
Yeah, premise one, all unsupported matter goes down, right? So then all you need to tell him is, if that's true, then that's an absolute. If I could give you one counterexample, then that disproves your assertion. And then he has to agree, and then you give him the counterexample, and then you ask him, okay, you need to rephrase your assertion, or maybe pose it as a question.
Yeah, I do. So gas go down, go boom boom? Question mark.
I'm telling you, he don't include gases. These people are nuts.
Yeah, that's why you have to ask him if gas go down, go boom boom, go splash splash, form puddles, like rain. That's how gas behaves, right?
Well, a lot of things go up besides that. I mean,
Not when you've got a downward
just...
bias. No, not when your first premise is all unsupported matter goes down. Then no, Neil, they don't.
Yeah. And Neil, a lot of those arguments that you're about to make, like other things go up, they're in a supportive medium. So that would, be really not precise to what he's saying. But gas, if you put gas in a vacuum chamber, right, at the bottom, it'll fill the tank.
That's what it does. It doesn't go down because it's unsupported, as that statement declares, for you to accept, to then explain why stuff is going down after they've declared that it's going down because it's unsupported. And all matter behaves that way, with a bias down. No, it doesn't.
Oh, wait. Here's your pride. Sulfur hexafluoride. We've dealt with this before. This guy's a moron. Sulfur hexafluoride. Get out of here.
What about it? It's a gas. Sulfur hexafluoride expands in all directions to fill the availability of volume it has to fill. Now, if you introduce sulfur hexafluoride in a very condensed manner, i.e. close together, from a container into an open fish tank, for example, it has to overcome the existing gas that is already in that space. In other words, over time, not only does it have to expand into an area of volume, it has to expand into an area of volume that's already occupied by other gases. So it's more likely to hit other gases and then bounce back down again, but eventually it will work its way between the gaps in the other gases and disperse to fill the availability of volume at a rate calculable in line with the natural law known as entropy. So sulfur hexafluoride just does exactly the same as any other gas. It diffuses to fill any available volume it has to fill. Without exception, gases behave the same.
Listen, when you have an agenda, you have politics.
So if he says all unsupported matter goes down, right, he offers you example upon example of that occurring, even if sulfur hexafluoride fits in that category. You only need one example contradictory, and there are plenty of examples.
Well, you can just show sulfur hexafluoride diffuse. Take it out of its sealed container, and it will diffuse. That's the bottom line. It will just behave like any other gas. Now, if it does that slower, so what? It's still doing exactly the same thing.
Like I said, when you have an agenda, you will latch on to anything and you will start performing politics. I had the guy in chat yesterday talking about Foucault's pendulum.
You don't need an agenda. You just need an absolute premise, right? This premise is true. I've decided it's true. It's true regardless. So you offer any kind of logic string, right? And the conclusion must include that premise as being true. And all you just need is an explanation to support the premise. You don't need any proof because you already know that first premise is true. So when you put it into any logic string that has a conclusion of a necessity, right, it must be true because you say so.
No, they have an agenda. Trust me. Their agenda is to wipe flat Earth off the face of the internet and everywhere else.
Well, maybe.
They claim they're fighting for science.
But some of them just have an agenda to use flat Earth as a foil for the other thing that they're actually more interested in. So they don't want to get rid of flat Earth. They want to take advantage of it. Whether it be their particular religion, whether that be about the nature of spiritual realm, or even the nature of the physical realm. Plenty of people like that in this community. That's their primary driving factor, to utilize the audience who's just had certain truths ripped out from underneath them and now have a truth vacuum, right? And they want to expand to fill that truth vacuum with their ideas.
Well, look at what Nathan read. What Nathan played yesterday. That video he was playing. I mean, they claim they're science, but they're not science.
Yeah.
Hey, Mitch.
Dude.
Hey, Nathan. Hey, Chance. Hey, Neil.
You know.
No.
I was going to say, you know how many times I've been in areas when I just ask questions about what people believe and they completely lose their shit? Like, is light a wave? Where has that been validated? Oh, you're garbage. You're retarded. You're blah, blah, blah. It's like, I'm just asking a question, homie. Even on this server.
Yep.
Came in incognito a while ago. Right? Just asking questions, clarifications. Got completely vilified as if I'm some kind of like antichrist superstar. It's quite fascinating. You should try it sometime. Go into a venue where they don't know who you are and just start asking simple questions that should just be answered plainly. Find out how quick you're worse than Hitler.
Give me an example.
Oh, like the delineation between the idea of a wave in the sense of a sound wave versus the way light behaves in the sensor system. Where a phonograph can have a single sensor, but light.
You're breaking up.
Right, just asking questions about it. Yeah.
You're breaking up. Alrighty.
Hey, Tent.
I edited that out actually, Neil. It's a few minutes long. Do you guys want to hear it?
Yes.
Can take days, even weeks, to produce just a single image. The dazzling final results, enough to keep us all dreaming of the final frontier for years to come.
That's the main purpose of this. To keep you dreaming of the final frontier for years to come. Time-dilating medium isn't real. So, yeah, who cares if it works in the maths or not?
They seem to care.
And mysterious universe.
No doubt. And now Chris Martinez is introducing us to two of the artists behind some of the most iconic space art in the galaxy.
In a small, bright office, working side by side,
Let's see.
Robert Hurt and Tim Pyle bring the universe to life.
So the asterisk underneath say, NASA artists paint pictures or picture of other worlds.
Does have real science underlying it.
Robert is an astrophysicist turned artist.
So he's an astrophysicist, and it's got real science behind it. Cut to his Mac.
That's hysterical.
Tim, once a Hollywood animator, is
not backed by science or uses science. Science underlining it. Most wishy-washy, unambiguous link between science and art I've heard.
They then follow it up with, he's an astrophysicist turned artist. So they make the connection or reaffirm the loose connection again.
It's like claiming he used to be a baker, so it's now a combination of cooking and art, because he used to be a baker. It's kind of irrelevant what you used to do. What are you doing now, son?
That's the distinction my 6-year-old managed to fathom. In other words, is he an artist or is he a scientist? He's an artist. Okay. Well, what's his art about? The quote-unquote science of our world.
NASA's most popular images, from renderings of how planets light years away could look to actual photos of stars and galaxies captured by NASA's powerful telescope.
Ooh. Hang on a second. This looks suspiciously like a piece of artwork. So this piece of artwork captured the photos for them to make new artwork. Why don't we just have the photos? Let's just have them. From the sky vacuum where this telescope is.
The real photo doesn't exist. All you've got from there is 1011101111111111. That's the data they get, not a picture.
Telescopes.
And this is sort of how it comes to me. And then
Many of those images have a dark, grainy start, but color and light reveal an astonishing glimpse of how the deepest regions of space might appear to the human eye.
How they might appear? Might? Hold on. The night sky is available to my eye. Shockingly. Why do we need you to do this again? What, how the night sky might appear? What if we imagined it in your space vacuum way? Yeah, because that only exists on this screen, doesn't it?
what I'm trying to do is show people sort of the broader colors that the universe has to offer.
The offer is available to my eye, and you're adding to it and telling me that this is what the universe could have to offer. I see. No, it's just what you're adding to it, what you've decided it has got to offer because you're adding it to it and then offering it to us.
It's a delicate blend of imagination and data.
Of data and imagination. That's pretty much summing it up beautifully, isn't it? That's what the heliocentric deception's all about. A mix of imagination and real data.
Mostly imagination.
In this instance, almost 100%.
Over many drafts to ensure a planet or galaxy's look lines up with the research to make each one as accurate as possible.
So if it's lining up with the research and the research is taking pictures of it, why do the artist renderings need to match up with the research. Just show the photo, then it would match implicitly. It's nonsense. All they have is the artist's renderings of these spheres, because that's where they exist, on your television screen only.
I love the challenge. It's kind of like a puzzle to me, of trying to create something that looks really cool within the restrictions that were given by the scientists.
Like restrictions given by scientists? You mean the guys who are establishing cause and effect relationship by way of systematic experimentation based on hypotheses that establish a natural phenomena and the cause thereof, if validated correctly? They give you limitations on your artwork, do they? Oh, right. That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. Why would any artist have a limitation put upon them by someone who establishes cause and effect relationships empirically? I don't see why they should impose any limitations on anybody ever, other than the limitations that hypothesis-based systematic experimentation poses to them.
How is it that they're getting the data? Aren't they claiming to have like red waves and blue waves measuring the distance and therefore extrapolating to the prism of color that we see in this world and then transferring those colors to the wavelengths?
No, they're claiming to have photographs from satellites.
That too.
It's to make it look really cool, like you said.
They've already got photos, but we need to pass them off and then negotiate with scientists to see how cool they are.
Yeah, we also have to add the cool factor.
It can take days, even weeks, to produce just a single image. The dazzling final results, enough to keep us all dreaming of the final frontier for years to come.
That's the main purpose of this, to keep you dreaming of the final frontier for years to come. Shout out to Mr. Cheswick. So Mr. Cheswick's channel has also got another video. You know what? I'm actually just going to play that too. Why not?
This is starting to get like Globebusters.
Artist concepts is often very important to telling the story. We get a good look at the star.
Another reason we wanted to take this viewpoint is it highlights the fact that there are other exoplanets in the system.
You can see that in our first draft. You can see there's the star in the distance, and you can see the other 4 inner planets.
So get this right, the YouTube algorithm has identified this as damaging to the point where it's got to highlight that the Earth's not flat. It's like, this is a discussion about how they render the globe Earth in the fake images we see. And yet it's got a disclaimer about Earth isn't flat underneath it. There's not even a single mention of flat Earth in this video. Why would you need to disclaim to somebody who watches this that Earth isn't flat when it's detailing how the globe's created in CGI? I mean, I'm shocked that this should need to be here with its Wikipedia entry telling you that Earth's not flat. Surely this would convince you of how spherical Earth is. Look how many spheres there are in it.
That was the first actual image that the scientists got from us. The feedback was that water was way too blue. Yes, it fell within its habitable zone, but it was barely within the habitable zone of the star. Sorry,
barely within the habitable zone. It's in a CGI rendered image. You mean the fantasy that people will envisage when they watch this and see it and have a little article below it about this exoplanet, that which you're fantasizing and creating in CGI is somehow in the habitable / non-habitable zone on the border, so therefore needs more green water. This is how your world's been presented to you people. This is how the wool has been pulled over your eyes. This is how it's done.
What are we listening to?
It's Mr. Cheswick. I put a link. Go and subscribe. You know Mr. Cheswick, is that right, Chocolate?
Yeah, it's the guy that used to make the music, right?
Yeah, he still does, yeah.
They've cutted out the old excuse. It is CGI, but it has to be. So a little bit more justification behind why it's CGI. Now, this time it's an attempted validation from scientists as to why it's pictures and drawings of things that you've already got pictures of. So the justification is to ask a scientist to make it more scientific, that picture. Does that agree with science, my drawing?
Without the experiment,
well,
it's not science.
Let me just answer him. Well, with the astrophysicist being the artist and it being, confirmed by the scientists who tell him how light or dark it needs to be, I'm pretty convinced at this stage, having heard scientific terms a few times and scientific people's labels a few times, that this is indeed science, Adam. It isn't.
Without the experiment, it's not science. So what did they experiment?
They didn't.
What was the... Okay, so there we go.
So it's art. The art that creates the fantasy world of heliocentrism. That's what they're offering. Anyway, with that, I'm going to say, if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering Stream, there you go.
Outstanding.
About 3 hours of editing work.
Well done.
3 hours, huh?
You know, the part that stands out to me is the restrictions given to us by scientists. That part stands out to me. And the reason I say it does is because how about the restrictions given to us by natural law?
That don't count.
They're not limited by those in a computer, are they?
No. You know, with those clouds and gases around the spherical Earth in the middle of a vacuum, there's some restrictions.
So, because I was going to be upgrading Flatzoid's PC and then my PC, obviously I've watched lots of up-to-date PC videos, and a lot of them will benchmark and test the computers with games. So you have to watch the game footage. Now, really, all I'm looking at is the stats, but the game is a useful thing to push the computer. Anyway, one of the games that was on there was called No Man's Sky. So I watch a British guy called Random Gaming in HD. Love him. Great guy. And he plays this game and talks about how the game works and how it's got better in the last 5 years and they've polished it up and all this sort of stuff. Then he starts playing it and it shows an aircraft take off from a planet's surface, leave through the breathable atmosphere and then go into a vacuum, and then arrive at another gas-covered planet, and then land on it. Now, to every normie playing that game, not one of them at any time ever has gone, hang on a second. So down here on the surface, I can breathe the gas that moves around me in high speeds, all directions. But when I get to the what particular layer is it? Just some random point. Suddenly I'm no longer in the high-pressure gas. Nobody ever considers this. Ever.
Well,
yeah, people are playing space games all day long.
Duped.
Go on, Neil.
I was just saying they got the world duped. Nobody's even... Look at QE. He never even questioned it until he questioned it.
Yeah, you can't have gas pressure without a container. And these games aren't limited by our physics. They're limited by game physics. And game physics aren't going to ever have an issue with having gas pressure next to a vacuum without diffusion taking place, without it expanding to fill the availability of volume as gas does. In a game, at this level, gas pressure. Not that the guy in the game needs to be breathing, he's not got lungs. So, doesn't matter. You just make the texture of the air a little bit more milky down here, and then when you're in it, it's completely transparent. But as you're arriving, it's a bit more milky. Milky beyond the black bit. As you go through the clouds. And the clouds are really the only distinction between vacuum and planet's high-pressure gas. And that's all good. Nobody ever notices that it's a second law of thermodynamics violation that gas has to press on something to be at pressure.
You want to know why?
Because it's a fun game, probably. I don't know.
No, not that. No, this is an excellent topic here. Critical thinking skills are not being exercised. When people, as Neil said, are already preconditioned, all you got to do is say, we scienced it, or put a fancy commercial out on it, and people believe it right away. But if you can ask people to be using their critical thinking skills, that also needs a backstop. And the backstop for that is the truth. And so you have the truth of what a vacuum is, the absence of gas, and then you have the truth of what gas is next to a vacuum. It fills the available space. Now that's a truth. That could be demonstrated. No one could argue that. Even the heliocentric people can't argue that. But then guess what they do? They stop thinking and go with the programming.
Or they say gas, yes, it needs pressure, but it presses off. The gases press against each other.
Neil, I just got through saying that critical thinking needs a backstop that's called truth. Show me gas without a container being contained and creating pressure, pushing off itself.
Oh, you can't do that.
Well, then let's not bring it into it, because my critical thinking just destroyed it.
Now, how do we get everybody to critical thinking?
We don't.
Sharing the show.
We don't. Stop thinking we're going to get everybody. That's the key.
Share
We're not.
the show, because we're pumping truth out here. The more we share the show,
you're right,
the
and
more
I
people
appreciate
hear.
the plug. Thank you very much. But I think our responsibility isn't to impart critical thinking skills on the masses in the same way as Morpheus explains to Neo when he's walking through the fake matrix that they have set up as a simulation, that they can pause. He's trying to explain that everybody in this simulation, none of them are actually real at that point when he's making the example. But he explains it to Neo as follows. None of them want to be woken up. They'll fight to keep themselves here. Now, unless you can educate a child in critical thinking...
I didn't say everyone.
...and logic, there's a good chance that, you know, again, another Morpheus example, that sometimes the mind's just too old. You know, it's kind of can't teach old dogs new tricks sort of scenario sometimes.
I know the sentiment that Neil has. I have it too. But I also live in reality. And AI came earlier said that if you just go to a place and you bring up a topic, look what happens. And so the most important thing is for us, each of us, to be well trained in how to discuss these matters, because then we become the cause agent for change. Among a group of people, say 10, that might hear an argument I give on the subject, maybe one or two say, you know what, you made some good points. I'd like to talk to you later. The other 8 are going to mock me because they're preconditioned zombies.
And preconditioned zombies because the system that they are a part of has evolved over enough time to refine certain techniques that most people are at a certain level almost aware of. You know, in mainstream terms, you get psychology and you get propaganda educated to you at a certain level. So most people are aware of those things, but they're not aware of the level that they've been used to manipulate them. And they're, most people, too good character to assume that they're being manipulated at all, and will actually fight against the notion that they could be even deceived at all. Therefore, the people who are intentionally out to deceive them have figured the best way of doing that, the best psychological methods of keeping the people that they ultimately just need to keep under control. Now, as much as we may have broken free of those shackles and chains, doesn't necessarily mean that we have any tools in our arsenal to unshackle, well, I don't know, the population numbers, maybe it's 10 million, who knows? If it's 10 billion, who knows? But a vast number of Western world dwellers into wanting to break through of a system that they're suckling at on a daily basis and enjoy it. You know, there's just so many people that just don't want what we do. They don't want us. They don't want what we do, what we stand for. Even if it was true, they would be the same. I mean, if it was mainstream tomorrow that it was flat Earth, they still wouldn't want to associate with people like us. They just want Big Daddy to tell them how it's flat, why it's flat, and how to not worry about it going forward. They'd want that information. They'd demand it.
Do you remember the conversation I shared over a year ago about sitting at a pizza bar, and there was a very educated, well-off businessman who had several offices, and I decided to share some knowledge with him. And we had just met for the first time. And the knowledge I shared had everything that we talk about here, except I kept flat Earth out of it on purpose. The response I got from this gentleman was, man, now this is quote unquote, this is what he said, man, you're highly educated. What university did you go to? And I go, I didn't. It's all self-study. He says, impossible. I have brothers who've gone to university and gotten degrees and masters, and they don't know half of what you know. Now think about this. What if at that moment, after he complimented me, I said, oh, by the way, let me test and see if you really mean that, and then bring up flat Earth and cause that cognitive dissonance after he praised me. What do you think would happen then, Nathan?
It'd just tell you you're an idiot and he was wrong about you.
Precisely how I do it.
Never mind. Awesome. Yeah, you've got to go and suckle at Big Daddy's teat if you actually want to be educated, bloody flat earthers. He almost had me fooled.
He probably would have been mad because you didn't tell him that before he gave you the compliment. He'd been upset, like, damn it. Should have
Yeah,
said
like
that
wakey
before,
wakey.
and I would have called you a dumbass straight up.
Yeah, like with wakey wakey, right, Chocolate?
Exactly. You know, they want that up front and center, so that, you know, anything else that you say they can just discount. But now that you've made so much sense, and he's even complimented you, like, you're more educated than people I know that are educated. Yeah, the earth is also flat. Oh, my bad. You're a dumbass.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link together with a thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected. And if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now we are joined by 10th Man, Neil, Chocolate Saying, Mitchell from Australia, Brian's Logic, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome, one and all.
G'day.
Day, good day, good day.
Yeah, good morning.
Is it actually daytime there, Mitch?
No, good evening. It's quite late.
Oh, I'll rephrase that. Yeah, nah. Isn't it nighttime?
Nah.
Any evidence?
Good evening, my antipodal brother, Mitch. What's going on, brother?
Yeah,
oh,
hello,
shit,
over
you're
in the colonies.
me.
Good to have you.
Sounds like an upside down relationship.
Antipodal. Not upside down. He's not. Are you doing handstands right now?
Yeah, of course.
Thanks for making my point void. No, not upside down, right? Upside down means not the right way up. Well, as far as every Australian or any other South Hemisphere begging the question positioning person is concerned, they're not upside down, they're the right way up. But they are antipodal on a sphere from someone in the Northern Hemisphere, opposite to their position, both with feet attached to the presupposed spherical surface. That means that you've got a line between them through the sphere and arrows pointing at their feet at the end of each line. Well, that's neither of them are upside down. It's just a bugbear of mine when people say that word, when referring to the nonsense assertion that people are antipodal when travelling 180 degrees around a presupposed spherical surface. Anyway.
So antipodal is the British word for upside down?
No,
you have to be highly
no.
specific. Nathan's right.
Upside down and antipodal are very different things.
Well, not according to the pictures I see.
That's why I use the word antipodal.
Anyway, any evidence of a physical geometric sphere edge, that would be a horizon formerly known as Earth curve, for us to make any assumptions that as we travel towards it and drop occurs at 8 inches per mile squared, we're actually going to arrive antipodal from where we began.
Wow.
What was the question?
That was one way to throw me under the bus.
Is there any evidence that we have 8 inches per mile squared drop i.e. a physical limitation called Earth curve, to make the assumption that we will arrive antipodal when we travel towards that drop at 8 inches per mile squared with a physical edge called Earth curve. In short, any evidence of Earth curve?
No.
Flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris.
That's evidence of a flat Earth.
Well, I got nothing then. I mean, you look at something, I gave you something. What you
Look,
want
right,
from me?
we're encouraging the audience. We're encouraging them to give us proof of a globe, like it's claimed to be. And you're like, well, I got flat Earth elevation angles that can only take place on a flat Earth. And I go, well, that's for a flat Earth. Well, that's all I got. That's not Earth curve. Brian,
Well,
you're
Nathan,
useless to me.
Nathan, there's a term people use. There's a term people use all over the world. This is an upside down world. I've never heard anyone say this is an antipodal world.
The positioning is antipodal. The world could be upside down, meaning not right. Way up is the reference when you use that as an analogy. If the world's upside down, it means that your life's falling to pieces. Or you've just been burgled and literally all the tables are the wrong way around because they've been looking for your gold. Or whatever. But I'm just saying it's not the same as antipodal. Just look it up. Anyway, let's move on. I don't want to talk about antipodal positioning anymore because we don't have it. It violates the celestial sphere model to assert antipodal positioning. You couldn't take elevation angles to navigate across what they call hemispherical distances in terms of the hemisphere moving between one and the other. That you can do on a flat map with flat Earth elevation angle measurements to do it. Now, if you are to assert that you travel and arrive antipodal from your positioning, then your map and your positioning data doesn't work anymore. It doesn't reference being antipodal. That's my point.
Sounds like a pole dancing move.
The reason I like that word and I like saying that is because when I have these discussions with, normies, coworkers or whatever, it's like people don't really envision that. It's almost like they all believe they live on a ball, but they're not really sure how a ball would actually have to work in reality. So they don't understand the positioning of where people would be on a ball. And it's weird because you believe you live on that thing. It's like, it's just weird that people can't make that link. That's why I like bringing it up.
So
I mean,
if you imagine,
equate it to
hold on, just let me just speak to what you just said, Mitch. So if you've got one girl on a pole doing hip swivels, and then there's a beach ball placed on her bum, and then there's another girl sat holding the pole but just with splits on top of it, then their bums are antipodal from one another on that pole.
Holy shit, I just got it. I was going to say, yeah, is it like you're at one pole, on a sphere, you're at one pole, antipodal is on the other pole?
Yes.
180 degrees around the pole, yes.
From any position, though. So you are, I believe, on a globe, approximately antipodal from the UK, are you not?
Yeah, approximately.
On the globe model.
Sphere.
On the reification of a sphere Earth we don't stand upon, when projected from the celestial sphere model and the flat Earth it uses with the elevation angle measurements we actually take when we measure, transposed through the, goddamn, why can't I remember the name of this, Haversine, I believe is the correct term, formula, to transpose that onto a globe surface, to then do a globe Earth projection from that spherical surface onto a cylinder, to then roll it out back flat again with the longitude and latitude lines maintained in a grid for you to navigate on the flat surface with angles. Wow, that was a mouthful. It's a long road from flat back to sphere, back to a flat again.
I think antipodal from Mitchell would be probably Florida or somewhere like that, Southern California.
Oh, so, okay, my bad.
So Tent would be antipodal from Mitch.
I'm not antipodal at all. I like all types of dogs. All
just
breeds.
didn't. We have to pepper these things with disclaimers, don't we, lads? On the globe reification model, after the process described by me, which will now have to be disclaimed again, when you take elevation angle measurements to Polaris and create something that is utilising a sphere of the heavens known as the celestial sphere and plotted on a flat plane where you got the angle measurements from, you can then apply the Haversine formula to transpose that onto a sphere Earth, the one we show in the last few shows with the void Earth in the middle where the angle comes from. That's the transposition from flat plane in the middle of that sphere with a sphere of the heavens around it, aka celestial sphere model, flat plane that it uses, up to the globe map internally with you on a concave Earth looking up at the map that's projected up by way of that formula. So that's how you go from flat plane to globe to then have a cylinder wrapped around that globe to then project out the details off the sphere back onto a projection, what they will call a globe projection. So they've got an excuse when you have a flat map handed to you. Oh, well, it's obviously referencing a sphere. It's got latitude and longitude lines. It's come from a projection from a ball. What they don't tell you is the ball came from a projection from a flat Earth map. That's the bit we're harping on about at the moment, because I think it's incredibly important. I only took it out of the title for the live show today, but I still think we should harp about this indefinitely. The globe's a flat Earth model. That's its origins.
Can I make a slight reference to Lord of the Rings? Bilbo's book, From Here and Back Again? From sphere
hold on a second.
to flat again.
Just taking a quick straw poll in Skype, and the answer is no. Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Now, hang on. I mean, I was going to say something. Arwen came in, and now he's done, and we need to answer him, and then I'll be next, if I may.
Answer? No, you don't.
You don't want an answer to what you said?
Oh, if it's punny, absolutely.
Not for me. You were asking him.
Oh, asking? Sorry, I was just saying something.
Arwen's here. It's all gone to chaos. Bloody hell.
Oh, gosh. Nathan, all the angle measurements, where do they derive from?
Flat plane. Can't not.
So
Got to have a horizontal baseline.
So anti-flat plane, not antipodal then?
You can't be anti-flat plane. When you're travelling across from GP to GP, if so doing, not that you would, but you know what I'm talking about in terms of the navigation points to keep them simple, you're travelling across the baseline that you formed when you measured the GP positions to the stars. So you're traversing a flat plane. You're not ever going to be antipodal.
That's my point. So this whole thing antipodal, in how they navigate, it goes to the center of the Earth, and they're saying antipodal. Well, if all measurements are coming from the center of the Earth, and the center of the Earth is a plane, how can you be antipodal?
You can't.
Thank you.
In all seriousness, where the hell did the globe come from when people were measuring flat Earth elevation angles? What idiot just said, no, we need to make this into a sphere? Like, where'd that originate from? You said the Haversine formula, but who just goes, nah, it's got to be a sphere?
Well,
hold on. That's a big question.
Greeks say it's a perfect shape.
Let me just answer him. That's a very big question, which you'll have to find from one of my videos with Johnny Sarushi. So go and watch the 5 hours of history of flat Earth if you want to know where the globe came from. That's where you'll find it. It came from the church. It came from the Roman Catholic Church. That's where its origins lie, if you want to know the answer to that question.
Thank you. I'll go and watch it now.
Well, not now. You're here. Johnny Sarucci, Flat Earth, what's it called? I forget what the term was back then. Flat Earth United Kingdom with Johnny Sarucci. There you go.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Just don't ask me to spell Sarucci. Maybe someone else can help me out on that score.
Cirruci, I think.
I'm going to go with, yeah, definitely. I'm going to look it up. I owe the guy that much. He was exceptionally good guest.
S-I-R-R-U-C-H-I?
One more time. I'm going to look it up anyway, but yeah.
S-I-R-R-U-C-H-I, Cirrucci, or C-I-R-R-U-C-H-I?
I mean, what's the guy's problem, though? Like, he's measuring flat Earth elevation angles. Everything's flat. Everything looks flat. You have to treat everything as flat. And then he just goes and says to himself, where's the furthest from flat that I can make this? I know, a sphere. Just to muck with people, you know?
Yeah, it seems like it's just started off as a joke and someone took it serious.
Well, it's a sick joke. I don't like where it went.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I'm just trying to mute my laughter, but yeah, in all seriousness, how can people say that we live on a globe? Can we have some globe evidence, globers?
I'll rattle my
Johnny Cirucci, Cirucci.
What was the first three letters?
Cirucci.
So Johnny Cirucci, there you go. So I've got two videos, managed to find them as someone gave me the spelling. The first is called The Why of the Globe Lie. And that's Flat Earth United with Johnny Cirucci. JohnnyCirucci. And the second is called Flat Earth UK, The Jesuit Heliocentric Deception with Johnny Cirucci. JohnnyCirucci. So those are the two videos I did with them. One was a couple of hours long, one was just over an hour long. So yeah, there's about 3 hours of material that will give you the answer to this in historic terms. Johnny Cirucci is one of those few people that I can say I know how in depth he went, and you'll get this from when I talk to him. He's very well researched, so I don't know. I don't need to preface it any more than that. He's a good guy. You'll tell straight away he knows what he's talking about. Anyway, that's it. Go and check it out. So should we move on, housekeeping wise? Any evidence of axial rotation of the Earth-based variety?
Well, there's a claim that the Earth turns under pendulums, correct? That's the globe claim.
Sorry, turns on the pendulums?
What? The Earth rotates under pendulums. That's the globe claim, isn't it?
Yes, that's correct. So there's a claim that there's a 15 degrees an hour drift that is asserted as being proven by one Bob Nodell and others of... What was the group that actually did that? Was it... anybody
FE Core?
FE Core. So rather than just ascribing it to Bob Nodell, which is a bit unreasonable, it's just that's what the trolls do. They thank Bob for claiming he proved the assertion that Earth turns underneath the gyroscopic motion, and indeed pendulums is the same Foucault example, at 15 degrees an hour. That's the claim. Why would you mention it?
Why ever would I mention it? Well, I've so happened that I found a pendulum in Sydney that doesn't precess. So it'd be a bit of a problem for the globe believers if these pendulums should be precessing at a rate each hour. But this pendulum I found did not precess.
Okay, let me just check with you if you understand this. I'm pretty sure you do. Do pendulums precess? Yes or no?
Some do and some don't. It's
wrong.
Not a yes and no question.
That's incorrect. No, that's wrong. No, pendulum.
No.
Precesses ever. Pendulums have a specific property, like gyroscopes, but we'll focus on pendulums for the now. A pendulum only moves back and forth. Its inherent property is that it does not drift. It just moves back and forth. Now, the way the globe claim works is that because a pendulum moves back and forth, as you move underneath the pendulum moving back and forth, you see it seem to drift. Now, the seem to drift bit is the claimed proof Earth spins. Because you turn underneath it, something with an inherent property of only moving back and forth looks like it's drifting because you turn underneath. Your motion underneath it is the thing causing it to look like it drifts. But its inherent property is that in actual terms, for all pendulums, they do not drift. Okay?
So what's missing from the observation then?
An Earth
what's
actually,
missing from
the natural consequences if that were true. So what's missing from the observation? Well, I say nothing. It's a good proof of globe turn, if you ask me. Hey, check it out. I'll make a few devastating statements for flat earthers to suck on. It's a great proof of Earth turning. I mean, obviously, if Earth's turning under a pendulum, that's a brilliant proof, isn't it? Earth's turning under the pendulum. in the inertial reference frame, it's going back and forth, and there we go, we can see it seeming to drift. And that could only be because it's claimed we're turning beneath it, right? That's why it's seeming to drift, right? Because we're turning underneath it. So we're turning underneath things that are not attached in the same reference frame as the turning motion. So we're turning underneath aeroplanes then, because they're not attached either. What about hot air balloons? We're turning underneath them too, aren't we? Yeah? Continents come to a hot air balloon as they go up in the air. They just sort of hang around and a different country comes to them. That's how it works, isn't it? Because that's the natural consequences of that claim. We turn underneath a pendulum. Because if we turn underneath a pendulum to see it seem to drift, then we turn under hot air balloons and drones and aeroplanes and you if you jump up and down. And we'd notice that. It's a natural consequence of their claim. There's 15 degrees an hour. Coriolis effect. Perceived drift in the pendulum or gyro or anything else claimed to have Coriolis effect. The effect is induced because you turn beneath. So if we turn beneath a pendulum, we turn beneath an aeroplane. We just don't.
How can I get one of these?
It's such a good proof.
How can I get one of these unattached to Earth pendulums?
Well, they separate it. Their claim is that they separate it by way of the mechanism that it's suspended by, so that it's essentially free floating. So it can turn and it's just going to go back and forth because that's the natural motion of a pendulum. Ergo, it is only because the ground beneath it has a motion, you see a perceived deviation in the pendulum. So what you watch if you claim to be looking at a Foucault pendulum, what should happen is, as you watch it, it moves round. Well, the claim isn't that the pendulum's drifting around in a 360-degree turn. That's not the claim. The claim is the ground beneath it moves towards the back and forth motion of the pendulum. That's Earth turning beneath the pendulum in the claim. So it's very explicit. To have the effect, Earth must be, according to this claim, turning beneath. So that would have consequences. That's why they convolute it with examples like Coriolis with pendulums, aka Foucault's examples, because they're almost too complicated for your average Joe Bloggs normie to wrap his head around. Things like pendulums drifting. Pendulums don't drift. Well, straight away, you're at the first barrier that you've got to explain to Joe Bloggs normie.
Well, hang on. This pendulum that you saw in Sydney, was that inside of a building?
Yep.
Was that building have foundation on the ground?
Solid foundations.
Okay, and so the pendulum, the apparatus it was attached to, was that also connected to the building or the ground?
With large dynabolts, yep.
So if the ground is moving, wouldn't that thing be moving as well?
No. According to the Globe claim, the reference frame is detached because of the, according to them, special mechanism that allows the pendulum to swing around and continue to maintain its back and forth motion as pendulums do. As a result, we can see the induced effect of the ground, which is the separate non-inertial turning reference frame, turning beneath the inertial back and forth reference frame motion of the pendulum. So because it's detached on the gimbal, whatever they call it, I don't know if it's called a gimbal, but whatever, the pin that hangs it, so the pin can rotate, and then attached to the pin, there's an arm that goes through in a horizontal motion, so you can attach the pendulum to that so it can swing in one motion, back and forth. As it rotates, because the entire building is rotating around the back and forth motion of the pendulum to show the second reference frame. So that's a Foucault pendulum.
Interesting that they need to have a mechanism. It's supposed to go back and forth due to Earth turning, correct?
Yeah, you're getting too hung up on the fact that it's hanging from a building. Again, intentional, so that flat earthers can come along and say it's attached to the building. Therefore, no Coriolis drift, it's nonsense, it must be a motor, or blah, blah, blah. Then somebody who's more educated on Coriolis effect comes back and says, no, the pendulum goes back and forth, and we're seeing not actual deflection from the non-inertial turning reference frame. And the guy who's gone, it's attached to the building, goes, what? What do you mean it's in the inertial reference frame? That's the idea of doing that. Further to that, Foucault came up with a second example that is fixed in free space. That's a pendulum, not pendulum, a gyroscope, right? So therefore, it's totally unaffected in any regard. If the cage that's attached to the ground beneath, which is essentially the same idea as suspending this pendulum from this certain type of pin that can rotate, that's the same principle that you're trying to demonstrate when you have something that's spinning in free space. It's in this case, inertial reference frame. So likewise, if you've got a bike wheel and you spin it and you put it on the end of your finger, you're the equivalent of the building moving around the motion of the spinning wheel. Well, likewise, the building moves around the back and forth motion of the pendulum in the claim. But when you take it to a much smaller scale with something like a gyroscope, most people can wrap their head around, okay, so the gyroscope spins fixed in free space. It does not, let's get this clear for gyros now before we move forward. Gyros do not drift. That is not what they do. Their whole principle is that they remain rigid in space, not drifting. Now, if they have a mechanical deficiency to a small degree that has to be minor corrected for or balanced out, they're now trying to balance it out so it's staying fixed in space. Now, with the cage attached to it, around the gyro, like you with your bike wheel on the end of your finger spinning, right? As you move around the bike wheel, or the claim that Earth turns underneath the reference frame of the spinning gyro, you'll see the gyro seem to drift because the cage attached to Earth has moved underneath. So the gyro is a claim that you're seeing the 15 degrees an hour drift because the cage attached to the ground has moved underneath the fixed frame, that's the inertial frame of reference, of the gyro. So do we now understand how the gyroscopic motion in the demonstration with a fibre optic or ring laser or mechanical gyro is trying to be replicated on a bigger scale when you attach a pin to the roof of a building? The building and everything about it is attached to Earth, and then the reference frame that's inertial is created by that pin being able to rotate to claim to show you Earth turning underneath the pendulum. Is everyone clear? I'll repeat anything that anybody's not unclear on.
Yeah, can you go to Masterby and show the two pictures and tell me why it's not happening here?
Okay, perfect example. So, tense question is why, when you have a free-flowing, a freestanding weight dangling from a crane, why doesn't it just start moving? Well, the answer is because Earth is not rotating. Another natural consequence we would observe if we had items that had a potential pendulum motion ascribable to them. So these cranes could easily show a pendulum back and forth motion. If Earth was turning beneath them, that would be something we'd have to concern ourselves with, but don't. Likewise, if Earth was turning underneath things that aren't actually attached at all, not just demonstrating the capability of an inertial reference frame, aka the crane, or a pendulum, or a gyro, things that are literally not attached would absolutely have the consequence of Earth turning beneath them. We just don't exhibit this effect on Earth. So the answer to your question is, why don't they do this pendulum motion? Because Earth's not turning beneath them. We'd have to cope with the fact that they were if it was, and we don't. So it's not. Hope that answers your question. Any more? Hello, Adam.
I mean, all of that sounds really cool and stuff, right? That would make reality very interesting if we've got a non-inertial and an inertial reference frame, because if I get off the non-inertial reference frame, all the things that are supposedly moving because that non-inertial reference frame is spinning should stop. And from that vantage point, aka the inertial reference frame, I should start seeing the non-inertial reference frame actually spinning like it's supposed to be. Does that happen?
No.
You and your reference frames have been ruined.
It's on screen. You and your reference frames have been ruined as a claim that Simondan's debunking us describing the claim the globe makes of Coriolis effect with two reference frames. So what I've just detailed is the globe's claim Earth turns beneath a pendulum. Well, when Simon Dunn heard that, what went through his tiny pea brain was Nathan's claiming Earth has two reference frames and then decided to debunk them and told me that they were ruined. So essentially, Simon Dan told me that the globe Earth reference frames are ruined because he doesn't understand Coriolis. Clearly too stupid.
I mean, it's such a good proof of Earth rotation and Earth-based Coriolis that we've got rogue pilots even accounting for it when they're flying. Quite dangerous.
Okay, nice segue. So, Wolfie 6020 is claiming in comments to Anthony that he has the ability in his plane to account for Coriolis drift. Now, as I just described with the pendulum, the only way you can observe this drift is if you're attached to a turning reference frame. So you see the pendulum seem to drift because you turn beneath. Well, the pendulum isn't really drifting. It's moving back and forth. And likewise, the pendulum's just spinning in fixed space. It's not drifting. They don't drift. And likewise, planes that travel in a straight line, for you to be underneath them, going, hey, look at that plane, seem to drift, is an illusion of drift. So there's absolutely no way a plane is ever, in any circumstances, ever going to be accounting for the illusion observed as you turn beneath the plane. That's an impossibility. Again, admirably describing and showing how some of our opponents on the anti-flat earth side, in this case, Wolfie 6020, simply have no clue about how Coriolis actually works. It's only observable as you turn beneath something. Like accounting for it in a plane, what, you got a Coriolis meter? Ground control to Major Idiot. I realise you're trying to impress a blonde as you fly your shitbox. Nevertheless, we have a guy observing you from a roundabout. He says you seem to be taking a corkscrew path as he turns beneath. Please turn on your Coriolis correction instrumentation immediately. Thank you.
Well, I have some news on that front. Wolfie, he wrote a comment in one of my videos. Instead of addressing the video, which I was supposed to do, he decided again to not address the video, like he always does, and to proceed to tell me that he's making a video about the Coriolis effect and how he's going to debunk all of us.
Really?
So,
Coriolis effect is an effect you can only observe as you turn beneath wings, Wolfie, and you've already demonstrated to everybody admirably that you think you correct for it in your aeroplane, making you stupid. So if you think your credibility in regards to Coriolis effect, an effect that is an illusion only observed as you turn beneath, that you said you were correcting for, is going to be taken as anything other than a good laugh by us, then you're only appealing to your own dumb audience in that regard, my friend. You've already been demonstrated to be stupid by me, haven't you, Wolfie? You don't account for drift observed as you turn beneath things from a plane, you complete idiot. How many times do I have to humiliate you with this fact you got wrong and didn't understand? You haven't got Coriolis correction equipment in a plane, you complete idiot. Even I know that. I suggested that you should be fired as a result of you thinking that you can claim to correct for an illusion only observed as you turn beneath things in your plane. I said that should get you fired. And I stand by it because it's correct. You don't understand this effect that can only be observed from the ground as you turn beneath things. You thought you were correcting for it in your plane. Very dangerous there, Wolfie. You complete bonehead.
well, he's doubling and tripling down on it. Like he doubled and tripled down on that time he cut the top off an orange and tried to explain how you could use a chord line for a distance. And ignore the arc distance that's bigger and greater over the top of it. He doubled down on that. After he'd done that, he made a video about how you could cut the top off an orange and use the chord line through the orange to get your elevation angle or whatever. He doubled down. He was told he was wrong. I told him, Wolfie, no. I explained to him why. I was polite about it. No, double down. So now he's going to triple down on this complete nonsense. And he's going to even make a video about it.
But Brian, Ryan, even using the orange, that's not a very appealing argument from him. But on this point, Coriolis equipment to correct for an illusion from the guy observing on the ground, I gotta have me one of those.
Yeah, the thing is, Wolfie, everyone around us now understands how you got that claim wrong when you said you were claiming for drift in your plane. Yeah, we all understand and appreciate that that's a drift that's only ever going to be observed as you turn beneath the plane on the ground. Never to be accounted for from the plane. It's only an illusion from the ground if you could see it at all when you were turning beneath your little aeroplane. So you're just dumb. You're not going to salvage this, Wolfie. It's gone beyond the point of no return, my friend. No amount of, I had loads of money is going to get you out of it either. Okay, buddy? Have a good day.
I know a few pilots. Next time I
funny.
see them, I'm sorry, John, but I'll be quick. I know a few pilots. Next time I see them, I'll say, hey, what's the name of that equipment you guys have on the cockpit of your plane that corrects for an illusion from the guy on the ground? What's that thing called again?
I just think it's funny that he thinks he needs to
That
make
wasn't
a
rhetorical.
video
That was
to
part
get
of his
to-
point. Just try and follow the conversation, Chocolate. Go ahead, 10th. I know it wasn't answered, but keep going.
No, I know. When I see my pilot friends, I'll say, "What was that thing called again?" I'm not good with avionics, but it's some kind of apparatus you guys have in the cockpit where the guy on the ground, it's just some kind of Coriolis equipment. You correct for the illusion of the guy observing you drifting on the ground. What is that thing called?
Oh, the Coriolis correction meter.
I can't wait to hear the answer.
Yeah. Ground control to Major Idiot. There's a man observing you from a turning roundabout. Please turn on your Coriolis correction equipment immediately so he sees you seem to go the way you're actually going. Thank you.
Is it the guy waving or the guy throwing me a kiss?
The other thing that confuses me is that Wolfie 6020, the idiot that says he claims to correct for this drift that Earth's supposed to have in the second reference frame. So him in his inertial reference frame travelling straight, being observed from a guy on a roundabout, watching him seem to take a curved path because he's turning beneath him. That's two reference frames with the guy watching the plane seem to curve because he's on a roundabout, right? That's two reference frames. Non-inertial spinning roundabout, inertial aeroplane travelling over. Okay, so that's how you have Coriolis effect. Man turning beneath other thing, looking at an illusion of it seem to drift when it travels straight. Okie dokie. And Wolfie says he corrects for that in his plane. Anyway, Simon Dan says that the reference frames in that claim that Wolfie doesn't understand and says he corrects from, he says they're ruined. So what gives there? Simon Dan saying that the reference frames that Wolfie doesn't understand and thinks he has to correct for from a flame, they don't even exist, according to Simon Dan. So what are you correcting for? Are you correcting for the drift in the inertial reference frame that's not happening there, Wolfie? Because that doesn't happen according to Simon Dan. They're ruined, mate. So you've got two problems. Dan saying that you don't have two reference frames to need to account for drift, and me saying drift's only observed from the ground, as that is absolutely the case when it comes to Coriolis. Hence your humiliation there, Wolfie. I love humiliating Wolfie, the dumbass. This is great. Thank you, whoever brought this up.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Mitch.
Maybe they need to have a debate and square up which reference frames that Wolfie is correcting for and which ones are ruined.
Yeah, I agree.
Work that out.
Dan, get on Wolfie's back. He's saying he's correcting for drift in the inertial reference frame because he's a dumbass and doesn't know how this effect works. But you say they're ruined, eh? You need to get on that, Dan. There's obviously something wrong with one of you or both of you. Definitely both of them. I'm the only one right here.
That makes perfect sense. He's correcting for the ruined reference frame, so...
Yeah, that's right. He's correcting for the ruined reference frame, Dan says, that I've got on a globe Earth that's claimed to have two that is being corrected for in the inertial reference frame there, Wolfie? No, Dumbo.
Well, maybe he can actually show this apparatus, the Coriolis correction meter, as you labeled it. I'd like to see it and see it in more than one airplane.
Yeah, where is it in this little shitbox, Wolfie? Where's the Coriolis button? You know, you're going to point it out for this blonde? Hey, that's the button we press when a guy watches us from a turning reference frame below us. You see, from his point of view, it looks like we curve. So we need to correct for that. Him looking at us, looking like we correct for that. So we do reverse corkscrews. It'll be ace. You dumb idiot, Wolfie. I hope you enjoy salt.
Initiate the Coriolis correction procedure.
What you want?
Hope you enjoy salt. Sorry.
Are we talking about how Dumbo Wolfie is?
Yeah.
I'm dipping in and out, and I caught a video yesterday. You probably covered it, but never in all my days. Mitchell did the broken pendulum, didn't he? And he's done a video saying, "Wow, here's one that works," as if it's the mechanism that's broken that meant the other pendulum didn't work.
Oh, this gets better and better. You telling me Wolfie's talking about pendulums?
Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. So the pendulum has the effect of it drifting because Earth's turning beneath it, right, Wolfie? Hold on a second. Doesn't the pendulum correct for it? In the inertial reference frame, like your plane? You stupid idiot. Oh, this is getting better and better. Keep digging that hole, you Dumbo.
Hold up, Adam. The pendulum was broken, not the rotation of the Earth.
Oh, no, it wasn't
That's
broken,
my point.
Chocolate. No,
Mitchell,
let's just get this straight. It just didn't have the Coriolis correction button, like in the plane. The pendulum needs that Coriolis correction button because it's in the inertial reference frame and it has to correct for what we seem to happen as we turn beneath it. Yeah, Wolfie? How'd you like the taste, you Dumbo?
No, but wait, if the pendulum wasn't actually displaying Coriolis deviation, that means that the Coriolis correction device was actually working then.
Yeah, like on these cranes, they are fitted as standard with Coriolis correction equipment, aren't they? These have the correction, that's why they're not drifting.
Yep.
It's just like the sextant has a magical, quick sensor of the Earth mode button. It's the same thing. Just create a button. It does what you want. Bob's your uncle.
But in seriousness,
why not? They create valves too.
Let's just move on. I mean, in all seriousness, though, Wolfie is very stupid.
Wait a minute, move on. Chocolate, you mean the sextant doesn't have that button that takes the observer 3,959 miles to the center to the equatorial plane?
I don't think it does.
Well, then how do you get there?
How do you get an elevation angle if it doesn't have that button?
Well, let's see if we can establish that from a globe perspective. Is there any evidence that you can acquire an elevation angle measurement from a curved baseline?
No, Ruhi said no. You have to use
wouldn't need that button. Sorry.
Go ahead, Mitch.
No, they don't measure it from a curved baseline. Ruhi said you need a horizontal. They're not actually measuring it from the curved baseline. I don't think they even claim that, do they?
Yeah, they don't claim it. In chat, the guy said the other day, nobody claims to be getting an elevation angle from a curved surface.
Boom. Welcome to Flat Earth, fundies. That's right. The celestial sphere model was developed by elevation angle measurements from a flat baseline and then transposed onto your globe surface by way of Haversine formula to then be transposed onto a cylinder to then be rolled out flat. So you can claim that the flat map comes from a globe, when in fact it comes from the celestial sphere and a flat plane with elevation angle measurements possible, unlike your sphere.
Well, the thing about it is this. Sorry, Neil, go on.
No, I was just saying it's an admission. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, it is an admission. It is an admission. But what they're trying to do is equivocate, right, between the current dip correction and the original dip correction, and claim that there's a line that's been sent from, let's say, the sextant to the horizon, and the correction for dip is to bring that line up to the eye line, right? And this is what they keep on trying to do. They keep on avoiding that you bring the eye line down to the surface of the water. That's the whole point of it. But it doesn't really matter, because what they don't realize is that you're making a horizontal measurement, but your horizontal measurement, right, is not going to match the curve that's underneath it. So leave them off to keep claiming it. Because at any point we want, we can just show how the thing they're claiming won't work on their surface because the distances aren't going to match. You're making a horizontal measurement.
Yeah, what's the response typically, Brian? Oh, we're not talking about the surface.
Yeah, they can't. Yeah, I have yet to hear even one of them. Since last year, since we started talking about this, I have yet to hear even one of them actually address the height of Y correction. They keep on just equivocating between that and the dip correction. And they say, oh, well, dip correction is height of Y. But then they try and claim that it's an up-the-way thing because their dip correction is an up-the-way thing mathematically from a mathematical position that was back-engineered from flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris.
It's a differential. Let me just state what it is. So the dip angle / height of eye correction is the differential correction between two planes. That's what it actually is. Any evidence that
two planes?
Two planes,
dealing
yeah.
with two planes.
If you establish a plane, chocolate, then you don't need to do the correction. So if you're using a natural phenomenon such as the horizon to establish it as the plane, then you're establishing the flat baseline that is the ground, the flat Earth, the bit we dwell atop and are navigating, the ground. But obviously you're above that. So there's a difference between your line of sight in a horizontal and the plane of the ground below you. So you do a differential correction for that dip that you create when you look down towards the ground, essentially. That's what you're doing. You're looking down at a very small degree. So you correct for that because you want to establish horizontal. To use the tool, it just needs horizontal. So that's a correction. However, if you have a part of the tool that establishes horizontal for you, like a bubble, then there is no correction. Doesn't need correcting. All you're trying to do is establish horizontal. And because it's parallel with the plane below, both are lining up alongside one another, you don't need any correction. It works regardless, without correction.
See, because the horizon is the only steady thing at sea, that's why they correct down for sea level. Because what they're correcting for is perspective. It's perspective they're correcting for, because the horizon will appear majority of the time, depending on the weather, but most of the time it appears to be at eye level. Not really at eye level, but it appears that way. So they can't presume that it is at eye level because they know the sea, when they're using a marine sextant, they know the sea level is the horizon. So for them, that is where their angle of view. It's an angle, it's a visual angle issue. So they correct for the height of eye above the sea, bringing the eye line down. Then they know, without a doubt, when that eye line is on the water, they know without a doubt, because it's making a horizontal with the horizon. That means they know without a doubt they have a horizontal measurement. They can't. Otherwise, they just use a bubble sextant on the boat, just to create. If they could create a horizontal just with a bubble sextant or something else, they'd use it on a boat because that would be more. If it would be as precise, but it's not going to be as precise. Because they had instruments that did that, and they weren't ever as precise as the sextant. The sextant. There's a reason why the sextant uses the horizontal and corrects down to sea level, because that is the most precise you're going to get at sea.
Can we move on? Any evidence of the distance to the sun? It's directly linked.
It's over there. We got angles.
I have something to say when everyone has finished giving out about it. Which may be now. Right, I'll go. Right, I need to point out something. Right. A lot of people get this wrong, including flat earthers. And I'm not sure, I think Rachie might have got this wrong as well. But I can't label her with that yet because I haven't watched the video. But I know most of our opposition get it wrong. The reason that they have to claim parallel light rays, is because they're claiming a curved surface. Because they need the light rays to be parallel for the shadows we see in reality to match. So they need to match what we see in reality. And that's why they need parallel light rays, because they have a curved surface. Because divergent light rays will not give them the shadows in reality.
Who's talking? Who's doing that?
Someone's talking over me.
Birdman, can you pop yourself on mute, please? Unless you had something to add. Did you want to interject?
No, I'm sorry. I don't.
That's okay.
I don't know how I came off mute.
It's okay. It's okay.
Sorry,
Don't explain it. Go ahead, Brian.
Okay, yeah. The reason they have to claim parallel light rays is because they have a curved surface that they're claiming. And the only way for to match the shadows we see in reality over a curved surface is with parallel light rays. It has to come in parallel. But in reality, right, in reality, we have divergent light rays over a horizontal plane. They can't have a curved surface and have divergent light rays because the shadows don't work. But this is the thing. What they said was, if the shadows, right, or if the light is coming in divergent, then the shadows won't work. But if the light is coming in parallel, then the shadows will. And how they knew it would work if it was coming in parallel is because they knew it was a globe. This is the thing. So they set up a false dichotomy between two shadows, between two types of light, the divergent and the parallel. So they said, we know it's parallel because we know it's a globe. It's complete and utter rubbish, right? That's what they did. Whereas in truth, they had to hijack the Eratosthenes demonstration, which was a flat plane horizontal measurement of 500 miles. They had to hijack that because of the shadows he got, and then they had to make a claim about how light has to come in parallel because they know it's a globe. Once they added this Mach R value into what he had done, which I don't believe he ever did if he existed. But the point is that they want to talk about shadows and parallel and divergent light rays to keep people away from the very measurement that proved that parallel light rays can't exist, because we couldn't have the shadows we have if that measurement is real, and that measurement is real. That's the end of that. Do you understand what I mean?
Yeah,
they're keeping people away from that.
Yeah, they do it so often, don't they? Just have a begging the question fallacy for you to have to try and overcome. It's like, no, just attack the original premise that they're basing this on, rather than going into it with the premise hanging over your head like it needs to be.
Right, it is basically derived from a presupposition of the globe, right? Because of the light shadow measurements.
Well, yeah, but it's worse than that because we have our opposition. I mean, the level of stupid of these people, like none of them, I am convinced that at least I know their model better than at least 99% of them, because they're trying to debunk, right, claims that the light comes in divergent by showing, let's say, a grouping of poles, whether it be whatever they might be, poles were in a parking lot or something like that. They're showing parallel shadows off of poles. Like, it's not the shadows is the argument, you idiots. It's not the shadows that are different if the light is one way or the other. It's the sun and the surface that has to be different, not the shadows. The whole point of the parallel light rays claim, for ye absolute idiots out there, the whole point of it, right, was they needed parallel light rays to match the shadows we see in reality. Not that if we had parallel light rays and divergent light rays, that there'd be two different shadows. That's not the claim. I laughed out loud on my own there, right, when I saw some of the things they were posting as some kind of a debunking of me saying that parallel light rays don't exist. They showed me videos of parallel shadows. Talk about not knowing your own model. Go on, sorry.
No, I'm just going to move on, unless somebody else has got anything to add to that. I agree, I've seen a few people posting videos with parallel shadows on them. Like, I'm sure I saw one with a drone going up and down. Maybe it was you that posted it to me, Brian.
That was a good one in Neil deGrasse Tyson, where he was talking about Eratosthenes, but the shadows in the well were all parallel instead of divergent as they needed to be.
Why do the shadows need to exactly? I don't follow.
Because they're on a curved surface, but they
right.
the shadows
No, I
weren't doing what they
I
were meant
thought
to
you
be
were
doing.
asking me in physical reality when they don't, but you're saying they should if they're on a globe. I see. Sorry, I didn't catch. Took me a second to catch up with what you were putting down there.
It was an orthographic representation. I'm sure other people have seen it.
Yeah, what he did is he added in a third position. He says it'll only work on a horizontal plane with two positions, but it won't work with three. I added in a third position, right? But his third position wasn't in line with the center of his globe. I remember Dave Murphy pointing that out. He added in this third position, which was totally false. The way he said it wouldn't work across a horizontal plane was totally false. Right, if you look at what he did, it was totally false. But then he showed how it would work on the curved surface. But it didn't point towards the center, which it would have to do. So it was a complete and utter farce. I mean, the guy has been doing nothing but debunking his own model for years.
Is there any evidence you can have gas pressure without the necessary antecedent of a container to press upon?
No, because I can.
That would literally go against the definition of gas pressure.
And all examples in physical reality. And yet they claim this...
Yeah, that's it.
Go on, Chocolate.
I just said, yeah, that too.
And yet they claim the sky is a vacuum.
Right, but in reality on Earth, we have to use a container to create a vacuum in order to try to demonstrate gas pressure without a container. And that doesn't work.
Yeah, it fails when you try to demonstrate a ball of gas in a vacuum not dispersing into the space available. That doesn't happen. And as Arwin says, even if you try and create a false vacuum here on Earth, which takes a huge amount of containment also, you can't have gas pressure inside the vacuum chamber without dispersion. If there's any gas in there, it'll disperse throughout the container. Why? Because it moves in high speeds in all directions. The sky... I'll give the conclusion after you chat about it. Go ahead.
Sorry, I just said...
Go on.
Oh, to fill the available volume. That's all.
Well, the available volume in the heliocentric model is space. A vast, empty area, a volume for gas to fill. Well, if space is an area for gas to fill, then gas would fill it, and we'd all be dead. The sky's not a vacuum. Right. If it was, the gas would fill the space.
And it is theoretically, or colloquially, infinite. They only give a number to it because they like to calculate things about the galaxy sometimes, and they assign an arbitrary number. Otherwise, they can't do their calculations. You need a fixed volume to do the calculations.
Precisely. Any scientific evidence of gravity?
Based on the show earlier, all you need is some artists.
Okay, so I'm going to release that over the weekend, actually, so the members will get to see that either on the video I've already released to the members, which is called NASA, The Cutting Edge of Art. And I also played it in the pre-show, which only members will get to see, because this is a show that will go out next Tuesday for the Nathan Oakley subscribers. But, yeah, I'll release that clip over the weekend, so on Saturday, most likely, at the usual time, this time, live time, that clip will get released. So in a couple of days from now, if you are watching this live. Or if you remember watching now.
Nathan, the irony of it all was a former astrophysicist is now an artist. That's because there is no scientific method in astrophysicism.
I would say same difference.
It's a bit of an oxymoron.
I just made up a new word.
If you say astro, you're talking about the lights in the sky. If you say physics, you're talking about physical. So there's an automatically preordained assumption that you're dealing with physicality when you deal with the lights in the sky. Now that's a, as Arwin puts it, physical assumption bias that's right baked in there into the title.
Yeah, but we have a question along the lines of any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of cosmology, astronomy, or astrophysics. Well, obviously there wasn't, so the guy became an artist.
Nah, he just came out of the closet of being an artist because he was always one. That's what you are.
What about scientific evidence of gravity?
What is it?
Bending conceptual pseudo-Riemannian for space-time.
Doesn't sound like a viable, naturally occurring phenomenon.
You said pseudo, you said conceptual. I mean, you said a bunch of shit in there that makes it sound like it's not actually real.
It isn't.
So,
It's a fourth dimension we don't
there you
exist
go.
in. It only exists in the maths.
If it's pseudo-conceptual, does that mean it's real?
No.
Oh.
About any evidence of a self-perpetuating molten iron core at the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth?
Nothing tangible.
Global warming.
The key word is presupposed. That's what Eratosthenes presupposed the Earth was a sphere before he did his thing, and now molten iron core. Yeah, as long as you're presupposing, but no evidence.
What about any evidence of the R value? Earth radius.
Flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris.
That's not a... You did this at the start, didn't you? Think you're going to get me twice, do you sneaky little sod? No. But with that, I'm going to say a huge, massive, enormous thank you first and foremost to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. If you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, however, stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Another massive thank you to all of you watching live, for smashing the super chat, commenting, sharing, subscribing, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley. Stay tuned if you're watching on a premiering stream, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
Dun, 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 dun. Good show. Got through all the housekeeping questions.
I have something to talk about if you don't mind a little bit of background noise.
No, I don't mind.
Okay. Don't be too much. Just the noise of a hose. That's all. Watering the plants. Yeah. There was something, and QE actually went against me on this, and I said no, he was incorrect, and other people went against me on it, and I said no, they were incorrect on this thing. And it's not that, it's a globe thing, right? It's about parallel light rays and why there is a claim of parallel light rays, but it's not the why, because the why is the shadows, but how they have to come up with the reasoning for how parallel light rays are possible, right? The reason is, right, the way they state it's possible, they need parallel light rays. So what they needed is they needed a light source to have parallel light rays to be hitting a spherical surface. You need a diameter, right, of a light source that's far greater, or at least greater than that spherical surface. So that's why. Now, I know they've changed the size of the sun and the distance to the sun within their model several times, but it was always way bigger than their globe. They had to change it for different things to do with the stars that weren't fitting the model and different things. But at present, their sun has a diameter of 865, just over 865,000 miles, whereas their globe Earth has a diameter of 7,000 to 8,000, something like that. And the globe's diameter will divide into their sun's diameter 109 times. Now, the reason that gives them parallel light rays is not the distance. The distance that they have to place that sun at is because they have to match the angular size of the sun we see in the sky. That's why it has to be that distance within their model. It's the size of the diameter that gives them the parallel light rays. It's not the distance. The distance is only because if they don't claim that size is at the distance is at, then mathematically it won't fit the angular size of the sun we see. So the distance is not what gives them the parallel light rays, it's the diameter size of the light source. If you look at Polaris and how far away that is, you will find, now, there is no actual angular size to the stars, right? So that's the thing about it. Once it's the sun, they really need it. After that, they just tried to make it out as if the stars were all different suns and all this other rubbish. But it was the sun they really needed because that's what gave them the shadows. So they need the sun to be that size, right, within the model at the moment. But then it has to be that distance away to match the angular size. So the distance is only for the angular size, and all the rest of the stars, Polaris, and all the rest of it, that's all back engineered from the back engineering of the sun. So the sun has an angular size, an average angular size of 0.533 degrees, right? So they need their sun to be, if it's going to be 865,000 miles in diameter, they need it to be an average of 93 million miles away. So the parallel light rays thing comes from the size of the diameter, because if they could have the sun closer, they could make it smaller and have the distance. If they could have the sun smaller, but then the distance would be closer. The distance is only to match the angular size, but the parallel light rays is based on the diameter. So that's where that comes from. So when I said something about another luminary, I won't say it now, in the sky, there the other day on the show, right, doesn't have that diameter size, has a different diameter size, and can't give parallel light rays. That's something I may as well say it. The moon has a smaller diameter within our model than their globe, and the moon give us similar shadows to the sun. Now it can't give us even similar. Right, it can't. A full moon can't even give us similar shadows to their sun, because the reason that sun gives us the shadows it does is because it has parallel light rays, because it's claimed to be 865,000 miles in diameter. But the moon can't give you anything like that within our model, but yet it does give similar. I'm not saying it gives the same, but it gives similar shadows. And I don't even know if they're not the same. They might be the same. So the moon basically destroys them in that way. Destroys them, because they can't have the shadows we see with the moon. They can't have them. That's the reason why they had to, because they have a curved surface, that's why they had to have a huge sun that is far away, because they need the diameter to give them the parallel light rays. But all of that don't matter, because they don't have any, because angular size or any perspective is completely impossible within the heliocentric model. So It's all destroyed by that anyway, but just stating.
That's it. So do they put the sun out to an infinite distance in celestial navigation also then? Because you're talking all about fixed distances for parallel light rays and all the rest of it, but my understanding was that all of it, including the sun, was pushed out to an infinite distance. Am I wrong?
I don't know about that. Ted might know about that.
I don't know if he's disappeared. We'll ask him when he gets back.
I just got back. I was listening to the last part of Brian. I had to get a tea break there. They say that you must imagine the celestial sphere at infinity. It doesn't really exist, but the stars are so far away, and the way we see them, you have to imagine it. So, what's the question?
Is the sun considered an infinite distance given the detailed and lengthy explanation for the fixed distance and fixed size that they ascribe at 93 million miles with the sun at its particular massive size? Does that all go to hell in a handbag when you start talking about it being attached to the celestial sphere, i.e. an infinite distance away?
Well, I would just say, from that question being that direct, the sun, according to them, is 93 million miles away for a reason. And the stars are at infinite distance. And according to their model, we go around the sun, and the stars are also around us at an infinite distance. So I'd have to look into where they make a criteria change if they do. But I would say they probably differ in their model when they need it. But there's something else.
No, you've missed my
I'm-
question. Not in the model. We all got that. But I'm saying, given that's the case in the model, when you're using the sun and just, waiting and then using the sun again, are you considering it at an infinite distance in navigation? Forget about the model.
Well, if I answer that right now, I'll give away my next presentation. So I'll hold off.
Okay. Shh. I'll edit that bit out. I won't.
I don't know if 10th Man was going to bring this up, but I was thinking about this yesterday after our discussion. Can't you figure out the length of two other lines on a triangle if you have two angles and one distance?
Run that by me again.
Okay. You can figure out the length of two lines on a triangle if you have two angles and one distance. Am I wrong or right?
Are you talking about the Pythagorean theorem, Paul?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So if you have one distance and two angles, you can figure out the length of the other two lines, correct?
Yeah, if you have an angular size of something, you know the actual size of it, then you can determine your distance from that. If you have a distance to something and you don't know the actual size of it, but you do have an angular size, then you will be able to determine your distance from that. Using the length of the sides, you'll be able to formulate the length of the sides with the angles and whatever else.
Right, what I'm saying, right. I mean, if you, like I said, technically you can figure out the angle of the third angle by the two angles, and you have one length that you can figure out. So you should be able to figure out the length of the two other lengths of the triangle. Okay, so now that being said, if I know the distance between me, if I'm celestial navigating, and I figure out I'm 200 miles from there, right? Then knowing that the GP is 90 degrees under the location, I should be able to actually figure out how high the star is. You should be able to.
No, I tell you what, the reason you can't do that, I'm fading back on some of that. The reason you can't do that is because every time the star moves or you move, then your angle will be different and your height will be different. You have to know what height it is when it's at your 90. If it even has a height. We don't know what they are. So you can't determine the height of a star or anything in the sky off of trigonometry, Pythagorean theorem. You can't. You can do the maths and claim a height, but that height will change as soon as there is any movement. Either as soon as you move or it moves, then the whole claim is ruined.
The only thing that I could say that you have an argument against what I said is the fact that the star moved. That you should have a rough estimate if you do the time of day and the angle at that moment when you shoot the star and you figure out you're 200 miles away. You should still be able to figure out roughly where the height of that star off the GP. You should be able to.
Well, let's just say you deal with it two different times in the day, and you deal with one at 45 degrees and one at 27 degrees. The height that you get will be two completely different heights. So which one do you, and what height is it when it's at your 90? Because you have to remember what you're measuring with the angles is perspective. So that's a perspective height. Your only true height will be when it's at your 90. And that's pre-assuming that it's a thing that's up there, that you can measure a height to. How do you get the height when it's at your 90?
The argument you're making is you're only actually measuring the visual height of what you're looking at. That's it. But wouldn't that, but when I'm looking at things, like I'm visually looking at the top of a tree. But if I know the distance from me to the base of the tree, and I know it's a 90 straight up to the top of the tree, I have the angle, I can figure out the height of the tree. So I don't see, all you're arguing is that you say you don't know, but you should technically still be able to do that.
No, because you don't know, for a start, you don't know what the star is. Secondly, you can measure the actual
I don't have to know what the star is. I don't have
No,
to know
you're
what the
missing the
star
point.
is. This is
You're missing the point. You're missing the point. You're making an angular measurement, which is not an actual measurement. The only actual measurement you could make, if the star is a physical object that is definitely at a particular height above you, then you would have to do that when it's at your 90 degrees. You can't, anything off of the 90 degrees will not be the correct height.
Okay. Let's think about this through for a second. So if you're right, then I have 3 trees. There's about 3 or 10 trees in my yard, and I use this I never can say the word, so forgive me. The theorem, never can say it. You're saying I will never know truly the height of any of the trees in my yard. Hold on a second, Brian. You're saying is I can never truly know the height of the trees in my neighborhood because I never got a tape measure, got in a bucket truck with a tape measure and measured it.
That's not what you're saying.
I can never know.
No, I'm not saying that at all. No, let me 1 second. Let's just say if you take, like, I'm going to actually, because something you said yesterday, I actually would want to correct you on in a second, but I'm going to make this example. It's connected to it. If I take an angle to a star at a particular time, and an airplane right above me takes an angle to the star at the exact same time and they're at my zenith, or a person that's on a cliff edge above me that's at my zenith is coming out over the top of my head, and they take an angle to that same star at that exact same time, we would both get all three, the person in the airplane, me at the sea level, right, and the person on the cliff edge coming out over the top of me, we will all get, right, after any corrections that need to be done, we will all get the exact same angle. If I raise an elevation, will the angle change to the top of that tree?
Well, I mean, okay. Now, if I'm measuring, if I'm at different locations, if I'm walking down the street, and I may take different measurements of the height of the angle of the height of the tree, and the angle is going to change because I walk down the street. I'm trying to get what I understand you're saying, but I can always, at every single moment and every single step, figure out the distance between bottom of my feet to the bottom of the tree. And if I know the distance between the bottom of that tree every step of the way, yes, the angles are going to be different, but because my distance changes from the base of the tree, I still should be able to figure out the height of the tree, no matter what position I'm looking at the tree.
Yeah, but that's not what I said either. If you take an angle to the tree,
what I thought you said.
Hang on. If you take an angle to the tree, and then you raise up, holding the exact same zenith, and you raise up in elevation, that angle will be a different angle. If you need to use a right angle triangle, that angle will be a different angle. The only way to keep it anyway the same would be to correct for your height of eye if you move up. The point I'm making is that with the star, see, all angular measurements are only perspective.
Sorry, you're wrong.
Measurements.
That's
They're
wrong.
only measuring perspective. Sorry?
That's wrong. You're saying the angle would be wrong? No, because the angle's to the thing in the vertical plane, correct?
We're talking about, he's talking about trees. I'm just talking about with trees.
I know, but what I'm saying is that the angle measurement is in regards to the top of the tree in the vertical plane, correct?
Yeah.
Right, well, the horizontals are given, so there's no correction for the angle to the, for example, horizon.
I said, no. I said, if you want to take an angle to the tree and get the correct angle to the tree, then your angle, you'll have to correct, right, your height of eye to get a correct elevation angle because it requires a horizontal baseline. It requires the use of 90. Well, you would have, if you just use your eye line, you'll have an obtuse angle. That's no good to you. You need an elevation angle. But the point I'm making is your angle, point is that trees are not stars. Right, you will change your angle to the tree by your whole angle will change just by rising in elevation.
Can I have a stab at this?
Yeah, you have a go if you want. Then
No, you were on fire. Hold on, 10th. Just let him get to the end of that statement because he's getting to the most important.
No.
Go on, Brian.
Yeah, the point is that the tree is a thing we can actually see and actually measure to. It's not moving. We can take an angular measurement to it, and if we know the distance between you and the tree, then we can figure out from that angular measurement its actual height. But we can't do that, right? We can't do that with the stars. We would have to know what height the star is when it's at our 90 degrees. There's no point in trying to measure it when it's at 89 degrees, because that won't be its actual height.
Hold on.
That would be
So
an
hold on.
angular
You
height.
go from when you got interrupted by a 10th because you were so rude. You went. If you're measuring the height to the tree with an elevation angle and you adjust your height, you change the angle to the top of the tree. Not correct when it comes to the stars. The same behaviour is not observed. I just wanted you to go from there. That was all. You've already said the rest. But...
Yeah, exactly. But that's the point. Your angle.
But I thought we all knew this.
Hang on, Paul is asking a good question, and Brian answered it. And now I'm going to try to see if I could say something that might bring everyone together. If you take the tree off of the earth and throw it at an infinite distance and pretend it's a star, what happens? Somebody.
Are you having me on?
Sorry,
you preface that with this will bring us all clarity.
Then,
you joking?
Then the angle will not change, because if you're doing it that way and pretending that the reason that the angle doesn't change is because it's at an infinite distance, that's what you're doing there, if you're doing that with the tree tent. But it does require the concept for you to be able to see things that are infinitely far. So any angular variance created by your height would be negated by the distance.
So let's just cite celestial navigation as it reads. The height is irrelevant. They don't know because they assume them to be at infinite distances. The purpose for it is the angular relationship over the flat plane we live on. And that is the protractor arc. And so they're able to say it's over here at 90 because there's a hot spot, so to speak, a GP, where it's directly zenith over the Earth. I'm over here with my own vertical, my own zenith, my own GP. What's the distance between the two? So you pull out your trusty sextant, you shoot the horizon, bring it there, you read the angle, the time, and all the things, and you say, okay, minus this elevation height from 90 will give me the zenith distance. And that is the distance on top that matches your baseline from you to the GP exactly. So that's what they're saying they're doing with the sextant. It's never for height because they assume, in my little joke there, the tree is the star and the star is at infinite. So it's impossible for them to do it. So they don't even bother. Whereas a lighthouse.
I'm going to muddy the waters.
Go on, Paul.
Sorry, Chance, go ahead.
No, you go.
I want to muddy the waters.
You're not muddying
I want to muddy the
waters.
water some more.
Go on then.
What?
No, I said you had a good question.
It was a good question.
I said you had a good question. You don't think I asked this question? You don't think I'm still
Oh,
digging
that's
to
fine,
see
that's
if
fine.
there's... Yeah, no, there's... Don't think any question is bad. Bring it all.
Indeed.
Well, okay, my little one is wanting biscuits.
Go on, if you want to get a last note
hold
in,
on a
Paul,
second.
you can. I was going to round out, but go ahead.
Dude, well, this is gonna muddy the water even more. Now, elevation angle would be this. If I'm measuring a tree, this is my understanding. Okay, if I'm shooting the angle with my eyepiece and I'm 6 foot high, so I'm 6 feet from the ground, 6 feet up. So if I'm shooting the tree, trying to figure out the height of the tree, and I know the distance from me to the tree, then I literally, and I do the calculation, I would have to add, let's say if I calculate and come up with, let's say 50 feet, but the elevation angle would technically have to be 6 feet. So I'd have to make sure that technically the height of the tree would be 56 feet.
Paul,
Right?
can I finish what I was trying to say?
Okay.
0 to 90. I am 0 to 90. That's it. At 90, it's directly above you. At 0, it's at the horizon and it's going to disappear. You won't see it anymore because of the distance. That is what's happening when a person says, I see this star at the horizon and I can't see it anymore because it's so low. But then when it's any time above the horizon, all the way to his 90, he could see it. Now, the angular measurement for that is 60 nautical miles per degree. So at the furthest we could ever see anything, the sun setting, Polaris at the horizon, is 5,400 nautical miles from an observation, because then it disappears. That is the way they write in their books of celestial navigations for the angular relationship to the plane we live on. So that being said, you have to say to yourself, since they're not concerned with the height and they know the Pythagorean theorem, what's going on here? What do you think? I continue to search. Why don't they know the height? Is the sun really closer and they do know the height, but they don't want to tell us? Is that the case? Is this why they put that right up front center? We don't know the height, they're infinite. Is that what they want us to go? This is under investigation here. So, yes, good questions.
And on that cliffhanger, I'll say another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Programming streams for hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!